Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Dean's Roundtable. I'm Lawrence Singleton, Dean of the Lubin School of Business. Today, we're really pleased to have with us Mr. Chris O'Leary, who is currently a senior advisor at Twin Ridge Capital. One of Mr. O'Leary's earliest jobs was as a marketing intern at PepsiCo while he was a student at Pace University in Pleasantville. I understand that with this internship, he worked over 30 hours a week during his last 3 semesters at Pace University. He spent a total of 17 years at PepsiCo. His last role was as CEO of Frito-Lay Canada. He's also served as Area Vice President of Frito-Lay Midwest, Vice President of Marketing for Frito-Lay UK, Vice President of Marketing Frito-Lay United States, and had numerous other marketing roles at Frito-Lay and Pepsi-Cola from 1981 to 1989. He also served as Executive Vice President and Chief Operating Officer for General Mills International. He was responsible for all of the business for the company outside of the U.S., totaling more than $6 billion in sales across over 100 companies, and he was responsible for more than 20,000 employees. He's also served as interim CEO of Tupperware Brands and as a senior advisor to KKR. He is now in private equity as a partner at Twin Ridge Capital. Mr. O'Leary is a 1981 graduate of the Pace University Pleasantville campus with a BBA in marketing. He also holds an MBA from NYU. Please welcome Chris O'Leary to the Dean's Roundtable. Mr. O'Leary, let me get you to tell your story a little bit, if you would, and welcome.
All right, well, thank you. And thank you all for trying to see how many screens I got. Oh, multiple screens. So I'm looking at all your faces. Thank you for joining. So I'm going to take this hour to try to help you through my story, and there'll be time for questions. But if anyone has a burning question as I'm going through, Molly will figure out how to get you. She'll interrupt me. And so I graduated Pace. You heard that. What you didn't hear is Pace was my third college, and I got out in 4 years. With my class, if you will, 4 years after I graduated high school. But I was one of those whose father was really influential in what he wanted me to do, and he sent me off to engineering school. So I actually started my college career at RIT, and he was an advertising executive, and he wanted better. He didn't want, he says, "Hey, you'll be a doctor." I'm like, I'm not interested in medicine. He says, "Well, you're good at math and you like science," which were true. "You should be an engineer." And this was in the late 70s. So engineering was a big deal, and it's a big deal today, right? And some of you are nodding your head, right? So the moral of all this story is that lasted about 6 months, and I dropped out of RIT. I hated it. I absolutely hated it. And I sat on the living room couch when I came home, and they're like, "What are you going to do now?" And I had no earthly idea. So they said, "Well, why don't you go back to your high school and see if you can get into a school this semester?" So actually I got into Iona College at the last minute, and I spent 3 semesters at Iona College. And then I transferred to Pace, and there was a really important reason why I transferred to Pace, because I thought Pace had, I would say, slightly better academics than the other area schools, but it had a lot of extracurriculars that really helped define me. But anyway, and one of them was that PepsiCo internship. I kind of knew that if I got good grades and I worked hard, and by the way, now I found my passion. I wanted to be a marketing, and I majored in marketing at Pace. And I got to know all the professors, and I got to lead the advertising club or the advertising team. We competed against other schools, and that stuff was really important because it gave me confidence. And then sure enough, and Professor said, or the dean said that I did work 30 hours a week, but the internship started as I think it was like 2 to 5. I would leave in the afternoons, and I'd get to the office and with another Pace student, and we did that for a semester. And then it just worked really well. They kept me on, and they just wanted more and more of me. I was just, what it was? I was a good marketing guy, but they weren't using me for my marketing. Remember, I said I was good at math and science. That tends to translate into good analytical skills. I was a really good analyst for them. And I'd help them look at their numbers. And long story short, when it came time to graduate, I had other job offers. But what I really wanted is to stay at PepsiCo, because if you're in the New York metro area and you want a marketing company, PepsiCo is about as good as it gets. So in there, and as a young marketer, and then I and I went in as an analyst though, and I wasn't a marketer. They have this thing called brand management, but that was reserved for the MBAs, and people who came out of, who mainly they were 5 years my senior. They were in their mid-20s to late 20s. They had got work experience after college. They then went back and got a full-time MBA somewhere. But so I'm in there doing my analytical stuff. I really helped them understand what the opportunities in their businesses were. And then it came time I raised my hand and said, I want to be a marketer. I want to get into brand management. I want to work on the brands. I want to help understand how to grow those brands. And a bunch of you, are any marketing students? Can you guys, I see John's raising his hand. Elizvita is raising her hand. But anyway, so I wanted to be a marketer, and I hope you know what that means. And some versus, I wasn't an accountant, I wasn't an HR professional, I didn't study management, I studied marketing. And I really wanted to be an ad guy, but I thought marketing was a better blend of my analytical skills plus my consumer interest than pure advertising, because there's less analytical skills needed. Anyway, and it came down to, well, you have to go get an MBA to be a marketer, get into brand management. Are you willing to do that? And long story short, we agreed that I would go at night, which was not the path back then, and they would move me into marketing. So I enrolled at NYU. And it's just a testament to Pace's marketing program. Between what I studied as an undergrad at Pleasantville, and the same's true in New York, I didn't need to take a lot of marketing classes. I majored in finance because I was trying to become the best well-rounded business person I could for my marketing career. But I figured if I took more accounting and more finance classes, I already took all the marketing classes. I looked at what a marketing major was at a place like NYU for your MBA, and it's the same stuff we learned as an undergrad. It's, because you got to remember, a lot of those people were liberal arts majors or engineers. And so I didn't have to repeat all those classes. I repeated some of the senior level. I took some senior level marketing classes as an MBA, but really just to get access to the professors and pick their brains on things that I was dealing with as a PepsiCo marketing executive. So it became this really good symbiotic relationship. But then, and then my career just started taking off. And, why did it take off? I think my days, by the way, as an analyst, crunching numbers, understanding the business from the most basic entry-level position really helped me versus some of these, other marketers flying in from fancy-dancy business schools with their MBA and trying to play higher than they really should have, and they never really got down. So I just had this huge advantage of that PACE internship and all my analytical days, and I just started progressing really quickly up through marketing at the Pepsi Cola company, then into Frito-Lay, and then I went international with PepsiCo, and next thing I know, I'm in my 30s and I'm running, the Canadian business, which had thousands of employees and 6 plants and all this stuff. And I'm just like you guys, 15 years before that, but it just played. And then, then I had a life event where I transferred, or I moved to General Mills. And I'd like to say, you'll see a lot of stuff on my resume now, but all these things, KKR, Tupperware, Twin Ridge Capital, that's, I am way up the curve in my career trying to figure out how to stretch for an extra 3 to 5 years. My primary career ended in 2017. I left General Mills, and I've been, I had my highest level since then, but I worked for 2 companies for almost 40 years. And the last thing I'd say about all that, a PepsiCo career or a General Mills career, I started in marketing and I did a ton of marketing, but as you progress and as you then start leading organizations and you go up that pyramid, right? The marketing's being done by the people working for you, and it becomes much more of a general management job. And in the simplest terms I can give you, a general management jobs in a marketing context. So how do we sell more potato chips or Gatorade or Pepsi Cola to consumers? as a senior leader, you're worried about decisions and priorities. What should we be focused on? And do I have the right people, infrastructure, systems, capabilities to drive it? How do I get the most out of the workplace? And that's what you spend most of your time doing, and delivering the whole, bring it all together. But the marketing is being done by others. Maybe I would get a chance to approve it, but I'm not doing it anymore. So most of my career was beyond just pure marketing. But in the environment of those companies, they're marketing driven. So that was, I don't know whether that was quick or long, Dean, but that's kind of the thumbprint of my career. You want me to talk more about how Pace wove in there?
Sure, if you can, yeah.
Yeah, so I want to go back to those days where I'm sitting at Pace, right? So I did my junior and senior years at Pace. I knew I wanted to, so from day one at Pace, I knew what I wanted. I knew that I had in 2 years, not 4 years, but I also just had completed 2 years elsewhere. I wanted to be a marketer. I wanted to get into a company, either an ad agency or a company like PepsiCo or General Mills, and frankly, in today's day and age, those aren't the companies necessarily I'd be looking at, to be honest with you, because there's so much marketing is so pervasive now. There's so many different great marketing companies out there. But in the New York metro area, at least PepsiCo was one of the top ones. There's others. So I mentioned the professors, and I was really particular about what professors I took in those last 2 years. Early on in my academic career, not that I didn't take the easy professor. I didn't want the really hard professor. We all go through that, right? You had to go take a accounting 101, something 202, whatever. But when I got to those electives, it was really important that, so I paid a lot of attention to what they were about, what the reviews were, maybe if they had worked in industry, because I found that really, really important. And I found some really, really great professors. And so that was part of my success formula coming out of. I didn't have the best grades, but I had, I think I had a 3.6. But I worked a lot too, right? So I wasn't like fretting if I got a B+, but I didn't want B's or C's for sure, because I wanted the resume to scream, this guy works hard. But then everything else started. So that ad team thing was so instrumental in, because it was one of my first leadership responsibilities, right? So I got to run it. Now, when I joined it, I didn't get to run it, right? I joined a club, and they elected me president. But there were leadership roles in there. Only one person gets elected president, but there's probably 5 to 8 that get leadership roles. The moral of that story is, being able to demonstrate leadership at that young an age. One, it helped me land the PepsiCo internship. It helped me land the PepsiCo job full time. Because why? When I got to those interviews, I had something to really talk about. And I would talk about what I did well in that thing. And I also talked about what I was learning and struggling with, because I hadn't managed people before. But imagine this, here's a 20-year-old, or I think I was 20 at the time. Maybe I was 21, talking to PepsiCo, sitting down for an internship and talking about what I was learning in a leadership team of an ad club at Pace University. I was just speaking their language. I was being both, I think I was impressing them in what some of my insights were. I think I impressed them more when I was vulnerable and transparent. I told them what I was struggling with and maybe what I didn't know or what I needed to learn and why it was so eye-opening for me. And what I've learned throughout my career, it's hard to do that, particularly when you're a junior. But if you know you're in good standing and you're confident, there's nothing wrong with a little humility. I don't know. Please help me. You get a lot of credit for going into someone's office and saying, just like a professor will give you credit, right? You're not supposed to, know everything when you come in. Over time, you better learn it. But when you're first sitting down in a class, it's okay to talk to the professor, right? Well, the same thing with the boss. And fake it till you make it is not good in business, right? You gotta do the job, and if you don't know what you're doing or you need some help, ask for it. And that humility was part of my success my entire career. Some people, I didn't come from now you got to watch this word in today's society, but I didn't, because I am a white male, so you might say you're just born into privilege, but I didn't come from privilege the way some of these executives that I was running into or peers at PepsiCo and General Mills were. And I was just a little humbler. So anyway, that ad club was phenomenal for me. That internship, as you can imagine, was phenomenal. And it was competitive. There were a bunch of PACE students going for that. But anything like that, if you can get in front of that and land one of those, and I knew it, by the way. I when I transferred from my owner to PACE, I said, I'm going to get one of these internships. And if I do, magic will happen over time. I just can almost see it. And that's what happened. There were other things, though. I remember one weekend we went down to I think it might have been FIT for some computer-based simulation tournament with, now this was now not marketing, this was multifunctional or multidiscipline, right? There were accountants on the team, people from all sorts of, I think all Lubin, if I remember correctly. But anyway, those were just experiences that we had where I could apply what I was learning. And Dean, I can't tell you how all of that really came together for me. So when it came time to look for a job, one of the things I tell students like yourselves is, if you're a marketing major, this is you are your first brand assignment, right? You are a brand. You're now going to PACE, so that's part of the input into your brand. You decide to major in accounting or marketing, that's part of your brand. And whatever you can do to add or strengthen to your brand is an important thing for you to understand and for you to build, right? Too many people think, oh, all I got to do is go get the degree. I'm like, yeah, that's part of it, but you're going to get educated, but what you're really doing is trying to create your professional brand. Why should if I'm General Mills or KKR or PepsiCo, hire you? Now, it's not just where you went to college and what you studied, it's your values, it's the value of hard work, it's values of transparency and humility and ethics, and all sorts of things go into the brand. But I want you to think about yourselves as your remaining time in the university, to think about yourself as a brand and get experiences that help build that, so that you can offer all that to others. And that was very, very important for me. Okay, but I'm going to stop there, Dean. Where should I go next, do you think?
That's great. Well, let me thank you first for making comments about the student organization. You said the ad team. We should the students know that we have lots of student organizations in Lubin in both New York and Pleasantville campuses. And you took the words right out of my mouth. They give you a great opportunity to build leadership skills and things that'll serve you well, not only while you're in college, but throughout your career. Obviously, that served you very well. So thank you for saying that. What I'd like to do now is open it up for questions from the floor. You can raise your hand like this, or using the raise your hand function in Zoom, or you can put them in the chat, and Molly will get them out of the chat. But please take advantage of this opportunity to reach out to Mr. O'Leary and take advantage of his knowledge and his expertise. He's a very successful alumnus of the Lubin School of Business. And while you're thinking about what you want your questions to be, let me ask one myself. You made a reference earlier to you went back to get your MBA in finance and accounting, quantitative stuff. How important were those quantitative skills to you as a marketer? And what would you recommend that current students now who want to be marketers, how important is it for them to get involved with, to make sure their quantitative skills are up to date?
Yeah. So there's two parts to that question. I'm going to answer it in two parts. Because marketing's a all-encompassing thing. So I'm going to say, if you want to be a copywriter in an ad agency, which is marketing, right? Maybe not so much. So if you are art, right, or you want to be an art designer, go to basic class. Now, everyone else, so that's usually a very thin sliver of people who go into marketing. It's hugely important. And if you think like, hey, I'm not analytical, so I'm not an accountant, I'm going to be a marketer, you've got to brush up on those analytics, because what marketing is about is identifying opportunities. And the way you identify opportunities is you look at streams of data and you glean insight from it, which is another way of saying you analyze, right? It's analytics. So it's really important. Remember I said earlier, what really differentiated me from all these fancy Harvard MBAs at PepsiCo or other Wharton MBAs was the fact that I had that analytical grounding. I really understood the business from its base, its core. That's analytics. Interestingly, that basically some of that stats stuff, the base stat 101, I happen to be really good at that, and I actually like that. So you might think I'm kind of nerdy, but I like econometrics. I took an econometrics class. Dean, I couldn't remember if I took it at Iona or Pace, but I took an econometrics class. And that's high-end statistics stuff, right? It's really looking at data streams, and you can identify variables, but it really helped me. And I didn't do it I didn't run I guess I did run regressions and really high technical math stuff. But what I learned in my head was how to isolate things. So if you really wanted to understand the impact of advertising or promotion on a revenue stream, you needed to isolate it. You needed to somehow neutralize it so you could just look at the promotion period and see if it was driven by the 10-cent coupon or whatever you were doing, right, or not. So that stuff was, in my case, I would say it's one of those true differentiators. So how do you get it? Get it through the classroom, get it through experience. What's going on with digital. General Mills now. So General Mills, when I joined, so PepsiCo was in a different era. I left PepsiCo in the late 90s. So all this social media stuff hadn't even happened yet. But General Mills, when I got there, the marketing group were brand managers, and assistant brand managers. So kind of what I did when I was at Pepsi. Now there's this whole group that does social mining, data analytics, marketers who are in there just mining data and trying to figure out how to connect, how to chat, how to influence through social media. And then after you do that, then you jump over to the marketing side. So this data analytics thing is massive. It's why these companies are worth so much money. It's why, both the advertising, if you look at all this Amazon and Facebook and Instagram and TikTok, what they're really doing is there's data on consumer behavior, stuff that wasn't around 20 years ago when I was a young marketer, 40 years ago when I was a young marketer. You didn't have that. So you have to mine it somehow. Someone's got to do it. So the dean's right. You got to learn how to polish up on those skills. So if you wonder why you're taking statistics and some of those analytical classes, economics is another good thing to take. That's why you do it. Okay, did I answer that sufficiently?
Hey, that's great. Thank you.
Okay. All right, team, other questions. You got to ask me questions. Hey, Ben, by the way, thank you for coming, because this, when I said take advantage of what this university has to offer, this is one of them, right? The fact, I thank you for investing an hour of your time talking to someone, and you're doing it because you think that this conversation can help you, and you're right. There may be a nugget that comes out of this that kind of makes a difference for you. So these are the important things to be doing while you're at the university. Okay, who wants to ask the first question? It's always the hard one. Molly, do we have one?
Yep, Sophia has her hand raised.
So going off a little bit of your last answer, here at Lubin, we offer digital marketing and social media and mobile marketing programs. Do you kind of see marketing moving in this digital and social media way? Do you think traditional marketing is kind of going to move to the background? What do you kind of see about the future of marketing in terms of all of these new avenues and touch points?
Yeah. So when I was a young marketer, there was advertising, and it was mainly TV, and then it went to cable, believe it or not. So one of the first things that I had to tackle is cable networks good ways to put your ads on? Is that a good thing to do, or should you stay with the big networks, right? but then there was, so there was advertising, then there was consumer market research, and market research was mainly, you would have to run a survey or pay for a secondary piece of research to understand what consumers are doing. Now you're getting it all from your media sources, right? You can get the insights and the research from these social and digital. So I think digital and social media is marketing today. That is the best way to reach your consumer and to understand what they are doing through the data that you're mining, because you're watching their behaviors on what they're doing on Instagram or TikTok or Facebook, wherever it is. That's the name of the game. It's amazing to me, that last night we're here in this, I'm in Arizona right now. It's a winter home, and I got some guests coming down to play golf. I got to throw a bed together. I need some extra sheets. So I'm looking at sheets online, and guess what I'm getting inundated with this morning? Ads for sheets, right? That is the world today. Why would I possibly put an ad on a TV station for sheets, hoping that I reach Chris O'Leary or a Chris O'Leary who's looking for sheets? I know, they work every night, every morning they wake up and they say, here are the 10,000 people who looked for sheets last night. I'm going to market to that group. So that is, yes. So I think I would minor. If I was doing it all over again, I think I would, and I don't even know. There's a marketing major, I'm sure. Because that part's the same, by the way. What do consumers want? What do they want? Do they know what they want? How do you deliver that? And all of that. That's the same. That is the same. All this other stuff is what's changed with technology and the way people shop, and the whole notion of, so I made the mistake. I went into a department store 4 months ago because I needed sheets. Well, that was dumb. I mean, there's like 4 packages of sheets. There's no variety in those stores anymore. Well, how can they possibly do it? There's how many different sizes. And I went into Bed Bath & Beyond, and unfortunately, as you see what's happening to that's not a good concept, but it's insane, right? So much has changed over time. But yes, I would minor in whatever you said, digital, social. I would take a minor in that. I would get really good at that. Because by the way, guess what? A college student at age 22, 25, whatever it is, in their 20s, is going to be starting doing a lot of that work as they work their way up, right? That's the entry. I'd minor in it or get all over it or join that club, right? If there is a club on that. So thank you for that first question, Sophie. Okay, Molly, there's probably lining up. I know they're lining up, and if they're not lining up, they're thinking about lining up. Here's Natalie raising her hand. I see Natalie.
Hi there.
Hello.
So it seems like your undergrad, you had a very positive linear career trajectory. So can you pinpoint a time in your career where you faced any significant challenge and how you overcame that?
Okay. Well, there's a seismic one, because the big challenge was a life change when I joined General Mills. I'm trying to think, is that where I want to go? And you know that story, so you can tell me if you want me to get into all that. But let me see. Big linear. Okay, so it was anything but linear is what I'm going to tell you. It seems very linear, right? So I got to where I wanted to go, which was I found a marketing company, and I'm doing marketing. But once you get in there, there's so many forks in the road that, and frankly, it's hard sometimes to know how to navigate. So the first big fork in the road came within PepsiCo. I noticed that the Pepsi people were different than the Frito-Lay people, and I thought that the Frito-Lay people had the better training. And I can get into that, but I won't bore you with that unless someone wants to ask a follow-on question. What do you mean by that? But they were getting further ahead, and they just were better trained. I could just tell by interacting with them. So I raised my hand and I transferred myself from New York to Dallas. And my mother almost disowned me. She's like, what do you mean? Why don't you work at Pepsi in New York anymore? And I'm like, well, I need to better myself, and I think Dallas is the place to do it. Are a lot of you native New Yorkers? Right, you grew up in the New York metro area for somewhat. No, I'm seeing heads. Okay, so I was a New Yorker's New Yorker. Right, mom Brooklyn, dad South Bronx, me White Plains, Pleasantville School. I'm New York, and here I am, 27. I'm a New Yorker, but I'm now responsible for marketing of Diet Pepsi across the United States. But I thought like a New Yorker. And I said to myself, if I'm going to be a really good marketer, I can't think like a New Yorker, because that's only 7 million people out of 300 million. So I said, I think there's going to be an advantage to going down to Dallas, just because I'm going to start interacting with a different slice of America, right? So that was a fork that I took. And now I remained in the same company, but you can see that fork being if I jump to a different company for a similar type of development opportunity. The next fork had to do with, do I stay domestic or do I go international? And so they came knocking in 1990. Frito-Lay did say, go to the UK. We want you to go to the UK. And I'm like, well, that's a smaller business. Did you ever notice how I did the head of marketing for the UK after I did the head of marketing in the US? You probably didn't notice that, but if you study my bio, that's what happened. Well, the US was a $7 billion business and the UK's a $1 billion business. So I technically was demoted, but I wasn't demoted. I said, I've got to go do something because I saw that the world was globalizing. And I was curious of what that would mean for me as a person. And by the way, I loved it. I loved it. It tested me like nothing else I had ever done. Because as a marketer, you have your own gut. So you can look at something and you say, well, do I think it's good? Does it taste good to me? Does that piece of creative, that advertising, does it make me smile? Does it make me feel good? Does it make me cry or laugh, right? Is it emotive? I had an opinion on that. When I got to the UK, my opinions, I had two, they were just all wrong because I didn't understand the culture. I wasn't English, Scottish, or Welsh. Anything I thought with my gut was wrong. So now I had to operate without a gut. Transformed me as a leader. Why? Well, I would listen to my people before that, but I also had my gut. So guess what? What you're coming out of your mouth confirmed my gut. Okay, you're right. All right, let's go. If it didn't, I would probe you more. And then we decide whether we go or not go. Now, I got to really trust you. So it was just different. And I learned how to delegate more. I frankly learned how to make quicker decisions on people on my team who I didn't think were doing what needed to be done, because there's no safety net now. I am not the safety net anymore. So if Natalie, if you were my head of marketing and I can't necessarily help you as much. So anyway, it helped me as a leader. So that was another fork. And the other thing about all these forks, when I came back to the mainstream, I didn't at that time necessarily leap upward with my career. I always kind of moved laterally. But it was all those collective experiences over time that when it came time later in my career, in my 40s, okay, who is the most well-rounded? Who has, and it's not like they're looking at me, okay, well, you checked all these boxes. There was something about me that was all of a sudden different. Where all along, I'm kind of more similar than not. All of a sudden, I'm really different. And it's because of this collection of experiences. When I came to those forks, you could argue I took the road less traveled, and it made me a better executive. And we would, in General Mills lingo, so General Mills, let's talk about General Mills. General Mills is a cereal company. So if you wanted to work on cereal range, you wanted to work on Cheerios, and you wanted to work on Cinnamon Toast Crunch. Why? They put their best people on there. But it became a trap, and almost it became a career limiter, because people would only work on cereal. So they became really narrow. Where those, and then later in the career, those who went wide got more different experiences. when it came time in their for who's going to get it, what happened was everyone started lapping the people who stuck down and they thought they were stepping on the power curve. They thought they were doing everything right. It ended up they were not helping their career choices by staying on that power curve. They needed to have differentiated themselves or getting different experiences. So hopefully those are two good examples of where and then I can tell you, I made colossal, I never got fired. But I made colossal errors that we can talk about too. If you say, what's your biggest mistake? I can go down that path, but I decided to give you choices. Okay. But thank you for that question. Very good questions. Both of them so far. Okay, Molly, I know there's probably 10 or 12 others, but let's take them one at a time. Try to keep the fever pitch, at least somewhat under control here. Okay, there's John. Good job, John. I only see one screen, so I'm only seeing. So if your hands are up and you're not on my 16 boxes, I'm not seeing you. I'm going to flip to another screen. Go ahead, John.
It's very nice to meet you, and it's very nice to hear your experiences coming from Pace University. And it resonates with me a lot because I'm a marketing major with a minor in applied statistics, and I'm also pursuing a career in consumer packaged goods. I understand that you have a lot of experience in the CPG industry from Pepsi and General Mills. From your perspective, what are some of the differences and what makes the CPG industry so unique from someone who's actually lived it and worked in it for numerous years?
Yeah. Well, it's so one, thanks for the question, John. I understand totally what you're saying. When I was, remember I said earlier, I might have made different choices today. I said that earlier in my comments. When I was coming out of Pace in the 80s, consumer packaged goods is where the marketers were and where you wanted to land. No question about it. Why? It's all about consumer-oriented products that are part of consumers' everyday lives, right? And things that we eat, things that we wear, things that we wash our hairs with, we wash our clothes with, all of that stuff, brush our teeth with. That was where it was at. And because of, and that hasn't changed today. So if that's what it gets you up, and that's what got me up, right? I've always taken pride of people knowing a lot about what I did, right? I got a granddaughter now, and they send me pictures of her. Her name's Grace. She's now 9 months, eating Cheerios, right? Cheerios is such an important part of the fabric of this country, right? It's all of ours. If you grew up in this country, your first finger food, right? So there was something important. Now I'm on a telecom board, right? And it drives me crazy when I say, so if I say to you, okay, what have I done? General Mills, I say Cheerios, you all nod your head. I say Doritos, you nod your head. I say, Yoplait yogurt, you nod your head. I say US Cellular Wireless, you don't know what I'm talking about. I say Tupperware, you probably know what I'm talking about, right? So that was always an important part to me. So anyway, so that's the consumer packaged goods, and it's a wonderful, wonderful career. But marketing is so much more than that today. Technology companies are doing some of the best marketing. Insurance companies are doing some of the best advertising. It's crazy, right? So what are the best ad campaigns that are out there today? It's not Cheerios and Crest toothpaste. It's Progressive Insurance, and it's AT&T Wireless, right? It's so the skill of marketing and reaching is broader today. So I think there are more choices. So back in when I was, for me, if you really wanted to market, understand what consumers want, to figure out how to reach them, you came at the CPG. Today, there's so many more opportunities. And I would just ask you to think about, if I was doing it again, now, the industries I joined were growth industries, right? Snack foods are still growing. You want to find a CPG company or a marketing company that's on a growth curve. Why? Growth, it means increased profits. It means greater stability. It also means more resources to spend time marketing, right? If you're fighting a declining sector change and declining top lines, it's not as fun. So I would, if I was 20, in my young early 20s thinking about a marketing career, I would say, what type of marketing are they doing? What types of brands? Are you interested in sustainability and all that? Do they have a purpose? That's much bigger today than it was years ago. But then I'd say, is it growing? And is it in a growth sector? That's more important than necessarily being pure CPG, because I would not get into a CPG sector that's in decline. It's really difficult.
Okay, we have a question in the chat too, from Kwang Hyun. And maybe this can expand on what you were talking about in answering Natalie's question. When was expanding on a difficult time in your career and what made it difficult, how you got over it, and any lessons that our students can learn from that, any skills that you utilize to come to a solution?
Okay, so I'm going to tell the story of the first person that quit working for me. So I am now 25. So I'm back at Pepsi, and I was managing a group of 4 people. So I remember analyst, then they moved me into, I'm an assistant product manager, maybe on a brand team with Diet Pepsi at the time. Maybe there were 4 of us, and I've got a manager and 2 other colleagues, right? Assistants. Then all of a sudden I become the manager. So I've got 4 people. And I will tell you, I was struggling big time. I used to be honest, I didn't pay a lot of attention. I thought the HR classes were on the easier side. I thought it was common sense. I didn't really work as hard at those classes as I did my marketing classes or my statistic classes. I kind of just, I went to class, I got my A's or A minuses, whatever. But and all of a sudden now I'm managing teams of people, and a woman named Jean resigns on me. And I said, why? I said, and she was going to another opportunity, but I said, any feedback for me? And I got to tell you, it was devastating. It was devastating because I didn't understand her uniquely from the other 3. She didn't feel like I understood what she needed. And I don't know whether she said it or she applied it. It was almost like I didn't care to know. I wasn't clear in the assignment. There was just so much stuff. And it was an early wake-up call. And thankfully, the fortunate part was she was the only person on that team that resigned. Others resigned on me, but I got a really early wake-up call that I was still the individual. I'm going to say whiz kid. That's too flattering. But I was good at analyzing, and I had good marketing thoughts. But now I'm responsible for a team of people, and you are not, Chris O'Leary, you are not half as good at that as you were at your other stuff. But now that's what's really important, because you're only as good as the output of your team. And I was now failing, and I'm in my mid to late 20s. And it was I'm really happy I learned it. Now I'm also in the middle of my NYU grad school program. So Dean, you'll be glad to know that in addition to those finance classes, I supplemented with a couple of HR classes to understand what I might be missing or what I might have learned at Pace if I was really paying attention. And but I didn't need it at the time, or I didn't think I needed it at the time. And there's actually a real lesson in that for all of us is, you might know something, but if you don't really need it right now, it's why those internships are so good, by the way, in some of these extracurriculars, because you're applying what you're learning, and it has a way of imprinting in you differently than if you're not using it right away. So that's an example of a failure that I was able to correct. And it took me a while, by the way. It took me a while to become a great leader. Why? Here's another really interesting thing about it. one of my created in my mind, here's how I would look around PepsiCo, and I would look at the senior leaders, and I would pick who I wanted to be like, or the two. Okay, this person is named John Doe is doing really well, or Jane Doe. There weren't as many Jane Does back then. Now there's lots of Jane Does, but the Jane Doe, who do I want to be like? Why? What do they do? Boom, 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 boom. I would mirror them. I would role play. I would just study them. You do that too long, you become inauthentic as a leader and as a person. Because guess what? I was pretty good at understanding how John Doe would operate, and that became part of how I did things, but I was less authentic. So people had a hard time maybe relating to me. So all that soft stuff became really, really, really important for me. And I needed to get over it to become the leader I became. So I'll just stop there.
Maybe you have another question from Maria.
Hi, how are you? So it's
Hi.
funny, I study human resources. So I get it, what it can be to think from an outside perspective and then realize that it happens all through the business. So I just wanted to know if you, as an accomplished executive, have you ever been in a situation where like business decisions you have had to make push the boundaries of ethical behavior, or like how did you handle them?
Yeah, okay, great question. I would say because there's a hard line on ethical behavior that just can't be crossed, and those are almost really easy, but it's not easy. And here's a great example. I'm at a meeting. I'm at a golf tournament in Wisconsin, and my sales team's with me, and it's a woman managing this account. And anyway, long story short, the customer says something inappropriate to my female colleague in front of me, but joking around. And a rude joke. And what happened was I needed to have said something as the leader. And it happened so quick, I missed the opportunity to say it. So it was like, boom, boom, boom. He says something. Everyone starts laughing, some nervously. She's not laughing. I look at her. By the time I'm like, and everything's like, I needed to be moving in hyperspeed, and everything's going real slow. What do I do now? And then they're joking about something off, and then they actually leave the group. And if I could do it all over again, I would have said, that is inappropriate at General Mills. This was actually a Frito-Lay comment. We don't, I would have said something on the moment. I missed. What I did do is I grabbed her and I pulled her aside and I said, that was not right. I apologize. I should have said something, but I couldn't think quick enough on what to say. And we talked about it, and I tried to console. So that was really hard for me because I felt like I blew it. Now, I did not go back and, reprimand the guy. He had been drinking, there's all this stuff, right? And so those are tough. But what I can tell you throughout my career, throughout my General Mills career, PepsiCo was slightly different. There was you would get fired and we would fire people, and we have fired people. And I have personally fired people who come anywhere close to that Me Too third rail, right? There's no debate. There is no, well, I had a couple of pops, or I had some champagne, or no, nope. But it's a really interesting, maybe, as you think about companies, because you're going to see all sorts of things. And I would, even in PepsiCo had some behaviors. You find it in the international marketplace too, by the way. even in a company like General Mills, which was like in the North America, it was such, but the person I had to fire for misconduct was in Korea. And you could argue he was acting within cultural norms, and believe it or not, and it was inappropriate in North American norms, but within Korean norms, and it wasn't as egregious. You know what our code of conduct is? You read our code of conduct. You sign our code of conduct every year. We have to hold you to a higher standard, and we agree to disagree. He never really admitted that he was wrong within his local culture, but he agreed that within a global company operating in Korea, he understood what we were doing. So this is the kind of conversation we could have over if I'm ever on campus, or you want to ping me on. But these are good. But you got to understand your true north as a person, your true north as a company, and then. As I'm trying to paint, there's black and white, and then the difficulty is sometimes it's not as black and white as you would hope. And, you make that mistake I made with my sales rep, which is, oh my goodness, I could have been better as a leader, but I flubbed that one. But I learned from it, which may be hopefully something you're picking up. We're not perfect, and no matter how successful you become, you do mistake, but what you got to do is learn from things and grow, right? And Molly, we have time for one more.
Yep, and if you would like to put it in the chat, you can put it either directly to me or in the general chat, and I can read it out for you.
Well, I have one more while we're waiting. So you talked about your progression, different things that you've done as you've grown throughout your career. How has your work as a marketing executive and as a CEO prepared you for your work in a VC at Twin Bridge Capital? And what is your work there like?
So my work at Twin Ridge is helping find unique opportunities to invest people's money to get returns. So in a way, it's the same stuff. It comes down to, is it a good consumer idea? Do they have good infrastructure? Is it a good company? And is there a path to create value? What's different is they are oftentimes much smaller business. So we focus on the middle market. So these are, one great example. Anyone know Kodiak cakes? Do you know Kodiak cakes? It's a protein added pancake, granola bars, that sort of thing. But they're about a $300 million business. We really looked at them hard. It reminds me of, I worked for big companies. And one of the things I would say, in the VC land is you could argue that General Mills International, the business I ran, was $5 billion in revenue, but it was a bunch of $100 million businesses. Because Korea is 100 million and the Philippines is 100 million, and it's 100 million, 100 million. Some of them got as big as a billion, but most of them were 100, 200 million. So, and what you need in that type of company is very different than in a bigger business, because at the end of the day, a P&L is a P&L, and you can't smother it with infrastructure. So Dean, when I was building General Mills around the world, I would have to remind our North American colleagues that I can't do it the exact same way because I don't have the scale. We don't have the scale to build it the same exact way. We got to have the same principles of quality products and good consumer insights, but I can't invest the same amount. And that really helped me as I got into this private equity world, understanding that, okay, look, when I'm building when we buy or we're looking at a $200 million company we want to invest money in, the fix isn't to do it just like General Mills would do it in the United States, because you don't have that scale, you don't have that luxury. There's just not enough profit dollars to spend against the infrastructure. So you have to do it a different way, yet still get to the same place of, you need good accounting systems, you need information, both consumer and financial, you need quality systems, you need ethical systems, control systems, but you got to do it in a much more lean environment than kind of when you say, hey, Chris worked for 20 to $60 billion revenue companies. But I learned that these international markets are very similar to the middle market, private equity markets I've been playing in post big company life.
I'm sorry that we're running out of time. Very interesting discussion. I want to thank you very much for sharing your valuable time with us. Mr. O'Leary is a perfect example of a very successful alumnus from the Lubin School of Business at Pace University. And I expect all of you on this call to be sitting where he is in a few years after you've gone out and become as successful as he has been. We want to give you, Mr. O'Leary, a small token of our appreciation. Unfortunately, I can't hand it to you through the Zoom in Arizona, so we'll get it in the mail to you. But I can't thank you enough for your time today. And I want to thank everybody on the call for joining us on the Dean's Roundtable. Thank you, everybody.
All right, good luck, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Chris.